Welcome to the Happy Disruptors Podcast. If you're a creative thinker with an unconventional approach to your industry, you just might be a happy disruptor. Join your friends at the Great Outdoors Foundation for honest conversations about tackling critical issues like conservation with an uncritical disposition. If you like to smile and get things done, this is the podcast for you.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Disruptors Podcast. I'm Kaitie and I am so excited to have you all hear from our guests today. We've got 3 members of a really unique partnership farming here in Iowa. So I'll turn it over to Rebekah to introduce herself first, since she is a repeat Happy Disruptor.
Yeah, I was really excited that you invited us to be on today. I'm Rebekah Jones. I'm the Communications Director for the Iowa Agriculture Water Alliance, but I'm here today to talk about our family's farm and our relationship farming in the area in central Iowa. So I'll send it over to my father-in-law next.
My name's Tommy Jones. I spent 28 years with John Deere and finished my career in crop insurance, and now I am retired, so I just do whatever I want to do whenever.
I love that.
I'm Kyle Carstens. I'm from Adair County, Iowa. Farmed for 28 years. I think this is my 29th crop I will be putting in this year. Have a trucking company, a dirt conservation company, and do a lot of custom farming. So kind of well-rounded, I guess. Not saying I know anything, but I know I do a lot of things. So
I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We were talking a little bit offline before we started recording just about how your relationship came to be and what that looks like, but just get the listeners caught up to speed. Take us from point A to point B, now to point Z of your relationship as a farmer and landowner.
Well, as kind of a farm family, because 3 out of the 6 of us have had a career in ag, we decided let's buy another farm. So we all bought it together, and then we started looking for who was going to farm that, because none of us were going to do the actual work. I had some friends that I started asking about who to have farm it, given where the farm was at, and what came back was Kyle. So Rebekah and I went and met with Kyle and kind of started asking him about his farming practices, his conservation practices, and it just seemed to fit really well with kind of what we were looking for. And we said, let's do this.
Yeah, I feel like the story of buying the farm, though, is a little bit more crazy than that, because, 150 acres is not a small price tag. And Tommy's like, yeah, there's 3 households. He's like, do you guys want to go in on a farm? It could be like a family thing. And we're like, sure. And then all of a sudden he's like bidding, and we're writing out a check, and we're like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
But I think a big part of it too, though, was like, you had said you wanted to have more of a working farm so that you had better experience with your customers, because at the time you were working in agriculture and not retired. And then I had also just started my job at Iowa Ag Water Alliance, so it felt like a good time to learn a little bit more and actually practice what we preach, instead of just telling people what to do and not have any part of it. So that was kind of a piece of it. And then it's 3 households, so Amanda would be my husband's sister, and they're in Houston and also are part of it. So, cool. But yeah, it was interesting. I feel like, what did you think of us the first time we met?
just normal Iowa people.
So they had you fooled.
Yeah, I guess so.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I thought it was a great relationship.
Yeah.
So it's been better ever since. So.
Well, and so you used a term in your introduction, custom farming. I'm a naive, suburbanite gal. Talk to me about custom farming, and did you have other working relationships that had kind of set you up for expectations as you entered into this working relationship?
So that's kind of a 2-part thing for me, I think. The custom farming thing, I'll get into it first just because that's what you started with there. So custom farming, to me anyway, is like somebody hires me to combine or plant or spray, or I spread chicken litter and fertilizer and lime and stuff. So that's like my custom, like a farmer hires me is the custom hire thing. The other relationship thing you talked about, I have some other farms that are also crop share farms like this farm is. That's the relationship thing that I like. Actually the landowner can make, lots of times if they have a good producer on that ground, can actually make more than the cash rent people can. It puts them in a little different tax bracket because of different things. But if you have a good producer on that ground, you can, there's more risk too, don't get me wrong, but I really think it's a better fit all the way around. Because I've had people come to me and they're like, hey, we're going to rent the farm. Do you want to put a bid in, cash rent? Well, my response actually is, I don't. I'll come over and we'll talk about how I do things and what your expectations are. But I guess I'm maybe different than others, and I want to build a relationship, not just we're going to cash rent it 1 year and then mine the ground and not build it and have a long-term relationship. So totally different than a lot of people probably.
Yeah.
And that was something that Kyle talked about in our first meeting that was important to me, because he also said that he farms the ground like it was his own ground. And for us, conservation is a big part of what we're interested in. For me, I want this to be a family farm for generations. So we need to take care of the land. So we need a tenant that's going to farm it just like it's his own farm.
Right. Yeah. I love that, the phrase that you use. We want to build the ground and not just mine the ground. I think that is, that philosophy is something obviously we at the Great Outdoors Foundation are very much in support of. But talk to me a little bit about how that crop share model supports that philosophy maybe a little bit more directly than a typical cash rent relationship might.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, you may want to explain, I feel like a lot of people maybe don't know what the difference is.
Yeah. Let's start there.
Tommy, you want to go on that one or you want me to?
No, go ahead.
So everyone's just a little different, but the standard crop share is usually like a 50-50. Like the landowner pays half the inputs, gets half the crop. The farmer comes along with all the equipment, puts the crop in, takes it out, pays half the inputs, gets half the crop. That's how a lot of them are. I'm not saying that's how every one of them is. There's a lot of unique differences in there too. So, but for the most part, that's what it is. Yes. So. And
then the cash rent is pretty straightforward, right? And those can be multi-year agreements, or to your earlier point, it might just be, I need someone this season.
Yep. It's write a check once or twice a year, and you farm it however you feel. There's a lot of contracts now do have stipulations on what you can do and what you can't do, but for the most part, that's what a cash rent situation is. Yes.
Yeah. So then back to, thinking about implementing conservation on the land, and even the methodology that you are using as you are caring for the land and producing this crop. How do you see crop share supporting that versus a cash rent agreement?
Yeah, for me, I think there's kind of two parts to that. The first is finding someone with a like philosophy, that conservation is important. But once you have that, then the crop share, because you are sharing in the cost of inputs as well as the crop that's produced on the farm, it forces you to really sit down and talk about how are we going to manage this both short-term and long-term. Because as Kyle said, we're not just trying to mine the farm. Right. Yes, we're trying to produce income from the farm every year, but we also want to be able to do that long-term. So conservation becomes a big part of the long-term. And how do we do that? How do we share the cost of that? What's the impact today versus down the road? Do we give up some yield maybe today for some practice that we're implementing to be able to enhance it down the road? All of those kind of discussions come into play because we now both share in the cost of that versus Kyle just writing us a check and going and doing whatever he wants to do.
Yeah. And the benefit too, right?
Yep.
In theory. Yeah.
Yep.
So Rebekah, I'm curious because it feels like this is a huge overlap with your, personal and professional career. What was it like walking through this process? Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you grew up on a farm.
I did.
You did grow up on a farm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about how that experience has now translated into, all of these worlds kind of colliding.
Yeah.
Talk about how your view of farming has even transitioned.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it's kind of
exactly.
funny. My husband and I, never thought we'd work in agriculture. I grew up on a farm. Ryan, his dad, Tommy, has always worked in an agriculture type role. And we were like, nah, we're doing other stuff. And then Tommy found us both jobs in agriculture. But I
Never
love it.
say never. Yeah.
No, I mean,
Exactly.
it's been a really good fit and really fun, but it has been different. I grew up on a farm and very old school equipment, and Kyle has like the latest and greatest because
I wouldn't go that far, but
I mean, to my eyes it is.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, a big piece of that is like, how can we do like split application and be more efficient and use the equipment in a way that helps with the bottom line. So it's been kind of interesting, like returning back to farming in almost a different age and time.
Yeah.
But, and when I was a kid, like I wasn't involved on the farm. It was more just like I lived there. But I later found out that my dad did plant cover crops and has been for several years. So that was kind of cool. And then when we took him out to go visit the farm that we bought in central Iowa, because I'm personally from Northeast Iowa, he went out. I don't know if I've told you this story,
did not.
but he always calls me when he's almost to Des Moines, which is like 3 hours. And he's like, hey, I'm almost there. I'm like, okay, well, good thing I'm around. So he's like, I'm almost there. We got to go out and see that farm you bought. And he was like so proud of me and, like actually scooped up some soil and was like trying to tell me what type of soil it was. Of course, it's not as good as his in Northeast Iowa, but he thought it was okay. But even then talking about, I said, yeah, I'm a landowner now. And he's like, no, you're a land borrower because you only have this until the next generation. And so that was kind of something that I talked about with the family when we first sat down in the living room and started talking about, do we want to implement cover crops on this ground? Because when we first saw the ground, it wasn't in great shape, right, Kyle?
Correct.
It was a little rough. And I was like, my sister-in-law, I said, think about your child. Do you want them to have a piece of this when they're older? And so Kyle started right off the bat with like, how do we make improvements?
we put a lot of lime on first. It's a stepping stone, but you have to have your pH right before you can get your fertilizer to work right. So you kind of throw the lime to it to get the fertilizer, the pH where it's supposed to be, and then you kind of ease into the fertilizer. And I would say, Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong, you chime in here, but didn't you, so the first year after they bought the farm, there was another person that farmed it for 1 year because they didn't have notice, basically. And it was corn that year. And so 2 years later, we put corn on it. And didn't you tell me it was like, was it 125 bushel an acre better than what his yield was?
I do remember the first year was 121 bushels.
Okay. And it was over 200.
It was over 200.
Yeah. I think it was like 238 or something.
Yep.
I don't
think
remember
you're right.
exactly now. But anyway, it was tremendously better. So it just goes to show
Huge difference.
if you put a little extra in, you get a little something back.
Yeah.
And that's right away. I mean, I can't imagine what, I've always said it takes 3 to 6 years to get the soil where you need it. Well, I can't imagine what a few more years is going to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure with your background in crop insurance, this also has to feel like a bit of an intersection in your life because you're really talking about risk management and sort of mitigating some of those items that I would imagine you were taking into consideration too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My 28 years at John Deere was all financial services. Started my career as a banker, so that's kind of my background. And when Rebekah said it was not a very good farm, well, that was the reason we bought it. Was we were specifically looking for a fixer-upper that we could afford.
Right. Yeah.
That's honestly how I like to do it.
Absolutely.
You know what you have, you spend the money to get it right, and then you go from there. I feel like you're actually more value added doing it that way.
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
you are to buy a
Yep.
It makes a lot
high-end
of
farm.
You
sense.
started with the waterways, right? Cleaning those up.
First thing we did was went in and redid all of the waterways, tiled all of the waterways. One of the big issues was a lot of the waterways were washed out to the point that you could no longer drive across them. So when you're farming, having to go up and come back down is just a real pain. So
Right.
we wanted to make sure it was much more farmable than what it was when we bought it.
And you
So
had,
that was the first part, then the lime, and then
cover crops.
Yeah,
But
then
I was
cover
going to say,
crops.
the first time we went out there, like you could visibly see the erosion too.
Yeah.
Where it was
Yeah.
running off some of the slopes, and then just the color of the dirt changes from the bottom of the hill to the top. And so the tile, the waterways, and then the cover crops were all part of reducing erosion on the farm.
Yeah.
Well,
Most
the
of
other
our
bad thing about a waterway that you can't cross, then you're putting rows up the waterway, which a waterway does what? Goes up and down a hill, right? So then you're planting up and down the hill.
Yeah.
So you're going to have more erosion from that as well. So if you can cross that waterway, you're stopping that water, slowing the water down.
Yeah.
So a lot of facets to it.
Yeah.
More than just that. More than
Yeah.
efficiency, which efficiency is also huge. So
Right. Well, and it's a great proof point for you make these improvements, and they have sort of first and second and third degree benefits, right? So first and foremost, you're not having to make inefficient loops around the farm just in order to get your planting done, but then you also have all of these other ancillary benefits simply by stewarding the land well.
Yeah, the basic one is just keeping the soil on the farm.
Yeah.
Instead of it all ending up across the road in the neighbor's farm.
Right. Yeah, we talk about that all the time with conservation agronomists. Their sole focus, or I shouldn't say sole, but one of their primary focuses is just keeping the soil where it is.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece of it, certainly here, and then obviously in other parts of the state where there's more topographical changes, that is an even more significant consideration. Okay, so we totally see how those benefits come from restoring the waterways. Talk to me about cover crops. What have you seen over the course of your implementation with that conservation?
I kind of want to, if you don't mind, pause and just how we got to cover crops, because I feel like that can sometimes be, depending on your relationship with your renter, your landowner, not always like a straightforward process. So, because I work in conservation, I knew right away, like we wanted to do cover crops, and
You knew right away you wanted to do cover crops.
that's a good point. Yes.
Because that's part of the story, I think.
It is part of the story. So I wanted to do cover crops.
Right.
So it actually pushed me to research all the different programs we could sign up for to get paid for cover crops. So I narrowed it down to 2 different programs. I did lots of, internet sleuthing about the programs, but also like how to do cover crops. I'm not an agronomist. I'm not a farmer, so I wasn't going to tell Kyle how to do it. And normally I'd say like definitely work with your farmer immediately, but I felt like it was a big enough hurdle to get 3 households in a land ownership over the hump on yes for that first. So we started with a family meeting, and Tommy, that was pretty interesting because like Amanda, his daughter, my sister-in-law, she doesn't know much about farming, and we started with watersheds, and I think she asked, what's a watershed? And I was like, well, I need to back up and like really slow down and talk about this. But family ended up being on board. Do you think that went well?
Yeah, I think the meeting went well. I think I was the primary holdout, and not because I objected to cover crops. I'm very much a conservationist, and I've got another farm that's all CRP, so it's so I'm very much in favor of conservation. What I was more concerned about was what is the financial impact to the farm with cover crops. And before I sat down with Kyle and start saying, hey, how about giving this a try, I wanted to make sure I understood what the risks were, because, there's stories out there about it worked great, and then there's stories that it didn't work great. And I'm going, why? What? I was in favor of them, but I just wanted to make sure we knew what the financial impact was going to be. And that's kind of that trade-off of what can we do today for the long term, but what does it cost today versus the results in the long term. So I had to spend a lot of time getting myself up to speed, and luckily I was in crop insurance, knew a lot of people involved in conservation and cover crops, and I attended seminars, I talked to friends, and then ultimately a friend of mine came down, and we sat in the truck, in my truck, while Kyle was trying to dig a 15-acre pond, and talked about his experience on his farm. And I think that helped both of us get comfortable that it really gets down to management. You know, that's really the main risk. And if you know what you're doing going into it, really the risks are pretty minimal compared to some of the stories that you hear out there. So that was a big deal for me to get to that point. And then I'm like, it ultimately becomes your challenge, Kyle. If we do this, are you comfortable? So
you and I had him. Gosh, probably 6 or 8 phone calls about this, didn't we? I mean, we did talk.
We talked a lot,
extensively about that. Yeah, and after meeting with Ryan that time, that put a lot of my fears, for lack of a better term, to rest. I feel like
So that was a new practice for you.
I'd never done cover crop. We had some just where we do some chopping, small scale stuff, but in this larger scale like this, I had not done then. I'm still like, if I was doing my whole farm, I'd be concerned, just because it's such a timing thing on the seeding and the termination.
Right.
I would be concerned to do it at this point anyway as a very large scale, but we're working up to it. We're only in year 2, so I mean, no professional by any means. So
what I think is really cool about Kyle, it's been like, how many years have we owned the farm now? How many years have we farmed? 4. I guess only 2 growing seasons though with Kyle.
3 with Kyle,
okay.
And then 1 with the original tenant.
But one of the things I really like about Kyle is his answer is rarely no. It's like, let's talk about it. Let's learn about it.
Yeah.
Let's investigate. Because I feel like he's always striving to be like a better farmer. And like the other night when we had dinner and talked, that became like even more clear, like, what's the next thing we can do? And so I think that is, I'm just really glad that we found you, because it's been really cool to watch that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I want to dig into that a little bit. So do you think that you are emblematic of your peers? Like, do you think that is do you think they have a similar sentiment toward conservation, that, it's not a no, it's just that I need more information? Or what's your insight there?
That's a tough one. I can't say a broad yes, no, but I guess
I think it varies.
It definitely varies.
It's kind of like something we used to say in my last employment was, when you've met one farmer, you've met one farmer.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I can say this because I am a farmer, I feel like, but a lot of them are stuck in their ways. I mean, to be blunt, they're stuck in their ways and not necessarily willing to try things. And I do feel like you have to kind of take some farmers by the hand and kind of lead them and show them, especially the new things. I'm not putting anybody down. I'm not saying that, but I mean, they had to do that with me. I mean, that's basically what Ryan did, But it is a tough road to just say, go do this, and especially in the ag. And the economy's ag economy's horrible right now, so nobody wants to go spend any more money.
Right. Well, when I think about, I have almost no appetite for risk when it comes to my livelihood, so I completely understand that. I guess I'm curious, do you feel like it is, the hurdle is more on the funding side? Because I know that has been a piece that has been helpful for you all, accessing some of that cost share. Or do you feel like it is more of a understanding, sort of what you were getting at, Tommy, understanding how it functions and how it becomes a part of your management strategy?
I think that's what it is. I think it's management. You have to be, you have to be a better manager with it. You have to get it seeded timely. You have to get it terminated timely.
Yeah.
And then, when you're working with Mother Nature, it's all out of your control. So you have to do what you can when you can.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing in my mind anyway.
Absolutely. Rebekah, obviously you encounter lots of folks who are in sort of similar situations. Do you feel like you have greater appreciation for the farming experience now that you have been on this side? Obviously, having experienced that as a child, but maybe now as an adult.
I think it has given me a greater appreciation for the value of time. Like working in conservation, and maybe you feel this sometimes too, it's like, why can't we go faster? Why can't next year we have, every year 1 million more acres, or, whatever it is, just skyrocket the numbers. We've been working with Kyle for 3 years. I've owned the farm for, almost, or just a little bit longer, and we're still taking steps every year, and we're still learning every year. So this is year 2 of cover crops, but it'll be our first year ahead of corn, which is a challenge, a different kind of challenge and a different kind of risk. And so I don't really feel comfortable making new decisions until we've been through that risk and seen how it went. I don't know if that's how you feel too.
I would agree. I'm a lot more nervous about a head of corn, just because corn is high yield, high risk, high everything basically, and so it's just magnified is how I feel right now.
And I think it's really important to give Kyle time and space to figure out each season how these cover crops are going to work, because he's the one farming it, not us. And so he's making a lot of those decisions and learning and improving from those. And then, what I am thinking though, what's the next step? I've already sort of laid some ideas about bioreactors and saturated buffers.
Ooh,
so we'll see.
We'll
see where that goes.
And Rebekah, just for listeners who aren't familiar with those, let's talk a little bit about it, because they're really, so we have sort of 2 large categories of conservation practices, right? We've got edge of field and infield.
Yeah.
Cover crops are infield. Those are needed every single season, so they have an annual cost associated with them. But tell us a little bit about bioreactors and saturated buffers, because they're pretty awesome.
Yeah, well,
I'm not trying to persuade you, Kyle, I promise.
No
We've already
worries.
talked. He already knows.
Camera
Just give me
time
the
off
20
me, we're
later.
good.
Well, infield management practices, when you're in a landowner and farmer relationship, I mean, obviously that's got to work with your farmer. For edge of field practices, like a bioreactor or saturated buffer, that's completely edge of field. So it's going to be basically a filter that you put on the edge of the field that attaches to your tile, that cleans the water before it goes into your stream or your major outlet. And if it's done right, it should have absolutely no impact to the farm, no drainage issues. It just kind of exists.
Yeah.
And there's cost share to pretty much completely pay for that. Depending on what county you're in, it can be easier or more difficult. And so that's something that, if you're a landowner, is a really good option, because you're not changing any management.
Yeah, and no acres out of production, right? With both of those, those are areas where once the work is in the ground, I think there's maintenance associated maybe every 15 years or something, but largely, just does its job, and you can do yours. Yeah.
Well, since Kyle has so many businesses and also does digging work, I'm thinking, how do we make that happen?
Absolutely.
That is kind of in my wheelhouse. I haven't done one, but it's very possible. So.
And what I love, it's so interesting. I love the phrase you said, if you've met one farmer, then you've met one farmer. Yeah. I think it's the same thing for the land that you are stewarding, right? So one conservation practice is going to work really well in one area and maybe not so great in another. Their different combinations are going to be more effective in one acreage than they would be on another piece of property. So I think that is, as the practices become more readily available, we have delivery mechanisms like the batch and builds, where it takes some of the burden off of the farmer and landowner. You can start to see this just sort of portfolio of practices coming together and really taking care of the land from a holistic perspective, which is really cool. So my final question, and this might be, too open-ended to be beneficial, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Let's say someone is in your position, either as a landowner or as a tenant farmer, and they're contemplating conservation. What would you want them to know before going into it?
Who wants to go first?
That's a tough one.
First?
There's so many different avenues of that.
I agree. As the landowner, for me, like I said, it was understanding the risk. And, because you hear all kinds of stories, like I said, good results, bad results. And ultimately, I think what most of that comes down to, as I said, is management. So for me as the landowner, realizing that most of the risks are controllable, and that was a big part of me getting comfortable with cover crops. But that also for me meant it ain't my problem. It's Kyle's problem.
Yeah, exactly
so
right.
I need to spend more time with Kyle, making sure he's comfortable and understands those risks. Because if I force him to do it and it's not managed correctly, that is a risk for us. So again, it's got to be two-way here. So I think as a landowner, understanding the management required, the changes in management practices, as Kyle said, the seeding and the termination and what all of that means. I think that's kind of an important piece.
Definitely.
Now, you said conservation. You didn't necessarily say cover crop. So that's why I was like, that is very broad.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure which angle you were going with.
Well, I was hearing I wanted to hear.
No, you're totally fine. So,
You
but
can
as far as, since Tommy brought up, kind of focused on the cover crop part, I guess I'll touch on that. I guess the part that intrigues me about it and what I would tell other people, and I have told other people, is so this is the first year last fall was the first year that I had harvested a crop that had cover crop on it. Those were my best beans. Now, was the cover crop the only reason? We don't know. But they were better by like 6 or 7 bushel than any other farm. And so I don't know if that's from carbon from the beans like carbon. So I don't know if that's because of the cover crop or not, but it's a piece of the puzzle that I tell people when they ask. And that's what I would pass on to other people, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great.
I think my advice would be one step at a time. You don't have to do everything, but you do have to do something, right? So if that first step, if it makes sense for it to be cover crops, do that. For us, our first step was more like waterways.
Yep.
And then we did some soil testing to see what we needed to do for split application and things like that. So I would say always keep improving, just one step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Rebekah. For me, conservation is soil health. That's more what I focus on. Now, naturally, waterways, clean water, all of those kind of things, but also soil health, because that's going to be the long-term productivity of that farm. So waterways was kind of a first piece for me, then cover crops, then kind of where do we go from here? So one step at a time, and it's been a learning process for me.
One step at a time. We did a lot of steps in the first 18 months or 24
Kyle's like, I'm
months.
not sure. It felt like 30 steps at a
perfectly
time.
fine, as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah.
I agree 100%. One step at a time, but it depends on the producer and the landowner as far as how many steps do you want to take at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Do
probably
we take 5 steps one year, or do we take 1 step this year, then 2 the next year, and then we better,
We're probably lucky because you're willing to take 5 at a time, 20 at a time, whatever. Yeah.
And I think that one step at a time is also important in that when we bought the farm, we knew there were some areas in the farm that were not very productive. So initially we thought there would probably be some acres that we would take out of production and put into CRP. But now that Kyle's been farming it a while, we just talked about this a few weeks ago, are there some acres that we need to consider? And Kyle's like, I'm not so sure there is. Let's wait a while longer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really say yes or no, did I?
Yeah, no,
That's
you
what I
didn't.
said. He never
you
says
said
no.
let's wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm good with that.
Absolutely.
communication is the huge thing,
Yeah.
especially in a crop share.
Right.
Well, I say that because I've got a couple others that I never see, but they just let me do what I want, and we're all happy. As far as I know, I guess they don't complain, so we're happy. And that's the other thing that I want to convey too is you guys, Tommy and Rebekah, everybody that I've ever dealt with you guys on this farm, you guys are open too. I mean, you say how open that I never say no, but you guys being open to let me not do what I want, but I mean, you're putting a lot of trust in me as well,
Oh,
and that
yeah.
means
Yeah.
a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
it just has to be a good relationship all the way around. So.
Yeah. Would you say that has been the key to your success, is really the relational aspect?
Yeah, and the foundation of that is trust. But part of that is I'm smart enough to know I'm just not that smart, so I have to defer to him.
Yeah. It seems like, just from an outside perspective, you all have shared in this risk, and you say the word trust. You know, everyone has skin in the game, and
Yep.
so there is this equal, or balancing force that Tommy and Rebekah have your best interest in mind, because this is also their property that's going to be a part of their family, and it does seem like that is a unique benefit to the crop share model versus definitely you could still have the same kind of owner buy-in on a cash rent agreement, but it seems like the crop share really does sort of lend itself to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like with the three of us is what I'm going to say, just because I've dealt kind of the most with Tommy, you obviously,
Yep.
and then you, Rebekah, but everybody brings their own value. Rebekah knows a lot about the programs. That's been pretty good. Tommy knows basically everything else there is to know on the landowner side of that stuff, And then I bring a little value to the game, but just everybody does their part, and that's what I like about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, any final thoughts before we go into our finishing segment? Let's whiteboard it.
I think, if you don't mind, Kyle, talking about how you do nutrient application.
Okay.
Because that was when we were, Tommy did all the finding and recruiting. At this point, I wasn't very involved. But he found Kyle, but he was looking for farmers. And I think that was one of your requirements, is the ability to do precision application.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you do that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that is a conservation practice.
Yep. I'll touch kind of the highlights on. I guess you guys can ask more questions and if you want to go deeper with it. But more so what you're talking about, I think, Rebekah, that you want me to highlight is, so I do split application of nitrogen. Everybody wants to talk about the nitrates in the water and all this stuff, and that's getting to be a big thing, is nitrates. Everybody wants to talk, all the, lack of a better term, the non-ag people, they're all worried about nitrates. So what I do is I do put an application on with my planter. I don't put any nitrogen out. Well, there's a little bit of nitrogen in the dry fertilizer put on, but most of the nitrogen goes on with the planter. And then I come back, we take the weather forecasts that have happened since I planted into account to see how much leaching we've had. And then we set up a variable rate prescription to Y drop the rest of the nitrogen. And when not familiar with the Y drop, but
Certainly not.
It's two lines that go down the rows, and we're applying the nitrogen right on the top of the root zone of the plants down each side. And so by placement of that, and then getting the multiple, the varying rates of it should be within reason the best use of the nitrogen.
Right. So then just connecting the final dots, then that excess nitrogen that you might get with a conventional application method, you don't have that issue. Or maybe it's
nitrogen
reduced.
always moves.
Right,
but
yeah.
it should be minimized, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. But we are running into a little hurdle on that just the simple fact of we use 32% nitrogen, and anhydrous is another form of nitrogen, which is the cheapest form. And as the ag economy gets tightened up, there's quite a difference in product price. So it's tougher to use the 32 and still have the return versus anhydrous. So that's something we've got to figure out as we go forward. But it's ever changing.
Yeah.
So, yep. And then the variable rate. So to touch a little bit more on nutrients, I don't know if you were wanting me to go there, but so yeah, the first thing we did when we got the farm was we grid sampled it, so we know what soils where and how much of every mineral and everything is there. So we do variable rate all the fertilizer, all the seeding. So we're hopefully putting the right amount of everything in the right places is the idea anyway. So I think that's big too, to go along with all that stuff.
Yeah.
Not variable rating the cover crop because that's just a flat rate, but maybe you could variable rate it, but I'm not sure what kind of return you'd really get.
So I think that's really important for the sort of rental agreement that we have, because we're sharing in the cost of the inputs. And so when you're splitting up your application, you're putting on some closer to when the plant actually needs it, and you're closest to the root zone using variables, so that way we're accounting for different types of soil and what's in it. And so that hopefully is saving us money on inputs because he's doing that. So I don't know if Tommy, that was important to you.
Yeah, that as well as anhydrous tends to kill the earthworms, and earthworms help with soil health, and soil health was so. The split application was kind of a big deal for me as well. Besides just the variable rate application and everything being precision,
allows us to use less.
Yeah.
And hopefully are losing less.
Right. Yeah. So that goes back again to those like first and second degree benefits where, maybe someone is coming at this and they are really just looking to save on their input costs. And that is noble and worthy, and that would make it worthwhile. But then you have all of these other benefits associated with it, which, on the conservation side, we obviously see as a huge, huge benefit. So, thanks for digging into that, Tommy, and thanks for bringing it up, Rebekah. Excuse me, not Tommy.
We both did.
Yeah. Well, yes, both of you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Kyle, as well. Sure. Everybody played a role. Okay. Well, let's move into our final round. You were asking about the whiteboards earlier, and I don't get a sense that they'll be drawing, but Rebekah, you might have an artistic touch. Here is your whiteboard. And the question I have for all of you for our Let's Whiteboard It segment is, what are you most proud of with the farm? And obviously, Kyle, we're talking about this farming agreement that you all have together. Though I'm sure that there are lots of other things.
Does it have to be one thing?
No, absolutely not. You can make a whole list if you want.
No, 2 would be enough.
Two is perfect.
That's a hard question.
It is a hard question. That's what we're here for. And while the group is writing or drawing their responses, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you are listening. Follow along with what the Great Outdoors Foundation is doing on all major social platforms. And then share this episode with someone you think would benefit from learning more about the crop share model of tenant farming and some of the ways that can support conservation practices here in Iowa. Okay. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
You said nobody draw, and I draw. But I'm no artist. So
that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much,
Kyle. So do you hold it up, or what do you do?
Yes, you can hold it up right to the camera so everybody can see, and then you can show us.
So I think everybody's happy, so we're smiling.
Yes.
And I believe we're all making money.
Oh, fantastic.
I wanted to do like a timeline for like long term, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. So that's all I got.
I love it.
They also don't give you an eraser, so
it doesn't smudge off with your finger.
Just lick your finger and.
Yeah. All right. Who's next, Tommy or Rebekah?
All right. So, growth and productivity, which Kyle talked about, but also the appearance of the farm. I have an aerial photo before and after. wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a huge difference. And you got to have a little pride in that as a farmer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Rebekah.
I picked a cheesy answer. I picked learning and legacy. So I do feel like I've learned a lot through this process. The first time we met with Kyle, I don't think I probably said anything because I was like,
You were pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I've learned a lot. But also, growing up on a farm, my dad has always just really valued land ownership and taking care of it. And so I think it's really cool that we get to be a part of that in Central Iowa. So
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Well, thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you all next week.